You picture marble statues, disciplined legions, and emperors ruling the world from golden palaces when you think of Rome. What you don't picture is what happened after the crown was placed, after the doors closed. Because one of Rome's most brutal wars wasn't fought with armies. It was fought between a mother and her son. There are mothers who kill for their sons, and then there's the mother who made her son emperor, controlled every breath he took, and even crawled into his bed to keep that control, according to some Romans. Nero tried to murder his own mother 3 times. She survived poison. She survived a collapsing ship designed to drown her in the Mediterranean. But survival was never the victory she thought it was, because what was waiting for her was far more disturbing than history admits. This is not a story about a murder. This is a story about 2 monsters who created each other. One wore a crown. The other placed it there. And when monsters fight for control, nobody survives with their soul intact. If you think you know what a toxic mother looks like, you haven't met Agrippina. If you think you know what a son's hatred can become, wait until you see what Nero built. Ancient Rome had words for political assassination, for family betrayal, for imperial madness, but they had no word for what happened between these 2. We don't either. We just have the bodies they left behind and the nightmares they planted in history. Before we descend into the palace where this nightmare unfolded, drop a comment with your city and country, because once you see how deep a mother's ambition can go and how far a son's rage can reach, you will never look at family the same way again. Agrippina the Younger was not born into kindness. She was the sister of Caligula, one of Rome's most deranged emperors. She survived his madness, survived exile, survived being stripped of everything. And when she clawed her way back to Rome, she didn't come looking for peace. She came looking for a throne, not for herself. Women couldn't rule Rome directly, but they could rule through their sons. And Agrippina had a teenage boy named Nero who would do nicely. The problem was simple. Her son wasn't emperor. Her husband, Claudius, was. Claudius already had an heir, Britannicus, his biological son. Agrippina needed Claudius gone and Britannicus sidelined, so she did what any ambitious Roman matriarch would do. She poisoned her husband. The preparation was meticulous. She found the deadliest mushrooms in Italy, not the kind that kill instantly and raise suspicion, the kind that mimic food poisoning at first, then shut down your organs slowly while doctors scramble and fail. She hired a professional, a woman named Locusta, who ran what Romans politely called a specialty service. Locusta prepared the dish. Agrippina served it with a smile. Agrippina didn't blink watching her husband eating poisonous mushrooms. Within hours, the Emperor of Rome was choking on his own fluids, clawing at his throat, dying in front of the woman who fed him poison and the boy she wanted to replace him. Within days, she has the Senate convinced. Britannicus is too young. Nero is older, more capable, already married to Claudius's daughter Octavia. The fix is in. The votes are counted. At 16 years old, Nero becomes emperor of Rome, and Agrippina stands behind his throne, her hand on his shoulder, whispering every command he repeats to the Senate. For the first years, it works perfectly. Nero is a puppet. She pulls the strings. When he speaks, her words come out. When he signs decrees, her will becomes law. She even has coins minted with her face alongside his. The message is clear. You are emperor because I made you emperor. Don't forget who holds the real power. But teenagers grow up, and monsters don't stay obedient forever. Nero starts testing boundaries. He takes a lover, a freedwoman named Acte. Agrippina is furious. This girl is nobody. She has no political value. Worse, she distracts Nero from listening to his mother. Agrippina storms into his chambers. She screams. She threatens. She reminds him that without her, he would be nothing. And Nero, for the first time, looks at her differently. Not with obedience, with something colder. The tension escalates. Palace insiders start whispering. Some of those whispers are dark enough to make even Romans uncomfortable. And Rome was not easily shocked. They had seen emperors sleep with their sisters, execute senators for entertainment, and declare themselves gods. But what people started saying about Agrippina and Nero went beyond political scandal. It entered territory that Romans documented in horror and confusion. Tacitus, the historian whose father-in-law served under Nero, wrote about it. Suetonius, who had access to imperial records, wrote about it. Their accounts differ in details but agree on one thing. Agrippina allegedly used her own body to maintain control over her son, and Nero, whether willing or coerced, may have participated in something that shattered whatever remained of their already broken relationship. Suetonius records that Nero traveled with his mother in a litter, a covered portable couch carried by servants. When they emerged, witnesses claimed to see stains on their clothing that suggested intimate activity. Tacitus writes about a specific incident where Agrippina, drunk and desperate to reassert dominance, approached Nero with kisses that went beyond maternal affection. Nero's advisors, particularly the philosopher Seneca, panicked. They sent Acti to distract him, to physically place another woman between Nero and his mother before something irreversible happened. Whether these events occurred exactly as described or were exaggerated by enemies, the fact that multiple historians documented them tells you something crucial. This was a relationship so twisted, so saturated with manipulation and control, that Romans believed even incest was possible. Think about what that means. These were people who had witnessed Caligula's reign. They had seen every form of depravity power could produce. And yet they looked at Agrippina and Nero and thought, yes, even that is believable with these two. Imagine hating someone so deeply you want them erased from existence. Now imagine that person is your mother. Now imagine she might have violated the most fundamental boundaries trying to keep you under her control. Now imagine you are the emperor of the most powerful empire on earth, and you can't escape her shadow. Nero's hatred wasn't just political. It was personal. It was psychological. It was a wound that infected everything he touched. He couldn't run from her. She was in his palace, his throne room, his councils, his bed, his nightmares. Everywhere he turned, Agrippina was there, reminding him that he existed because she allowed it. So he decided to put her somewhere she couldn't return from, a grave. But how do you kill a woman who has been preparing for assassination her entire life? How do you poison someone who spent years building immunity to poison? Because that's exactly what Agrippina had done. She knew what she was. She knew how power worked in Rome. She knew that the moment she stopped being useful, someone would try to remove her. So she prepared. Every morning for years, she consumed small amounts of poison, tiny doses that wouldn't kill but would train her body to resist. It's called Mithridatism, named after a king who did the same thing. Agrippina turned her own body into a fortress against the most common method of Roman political murder. Nero didn't know this yet. He thought poison would work, so he went to the best. Locusta had already proven herself with Claudius. She ran what we might today call a contract killing service, specializing in deaths that looked natural. When Nero summoned her, she arrived with her collection of toxins, each carefully labeled for different effects: quick death, slow death, painful death, death that mimics disease. Nero's request was specific.
I need something that kills a paranoid woman who has spent years expecting assassination.
Locusta paused. That was an unusual level of detail. That's very specific, she said. The room went cold when Nero said he was talking about his mother. Even Locusta, a professional murderer, hesitated. Killing an emperor's mother was not just a crime. It was a fracture in the natural order. But Nero was emperor, and emperors don't take no for answers. She prepared a special mixture, something concentrated enough to overwhelm any normal resistance. Nero had it placed in Agrippina's food during a private dinner. He watched her eat. He watched her chew. He waited for the signs. Trembling, sweating, collapse. Nothing happened. Agrippina ate her entire meal. She looked up, met her son's eyes across the table, and smiled. Not a warm smile, not a loving smile. The smile of someone who knows exactly what just failed. She knew, and he knew she knew. Nero's rage was absolute. The poison that should kill anyone just made his mother smile at him, like he was still a child, playing games. He summoned Locusta again, screaming,
What did you give me? She's still alive.
Locusta had no answer. She had given him her strongest formula. The fact that it failed meant Agrippina was exactly what Nero feared, unkillable by normal means. But Nero was done with subtle. He was done with poison. If chemicals wouldn't work, he needed engineering. He called in builders, ship designers, the kind of craftsmen who understood mechanics and weight distribution. His instructions were precise. Build a ship with a collapsible roof, make it look luxurious, fit for an emperor's mother, but design it so that at a specific signal, the entire top structure would crash down, crushing anyone underneath, and make the bottom detachable so the whole vessel would sink quickly, drowning any survivors. A murder dressed as an accident. Brilliant, cowardly, perfect. He sent Agrippina an invitation.
Mother, join me at Baiae for the festival. I'll send my personal ship to bring you.
Agrippina was suspicious. Of course she was. But refusing would confirm the rift publicly. And despite everything, some part of her still believed she could control him. So she came. The night before the voyage, Nero put on a performance. He hugged his mother. He kissed her forehead. He held her close, his face pressed against her hair. Tacitus noted this moment with unusual attention. Perhaps guilt touched Nero for just a second. Perhaps he remembered a time when she was just his mother, not his jailer. Perhaps he felt the weight of what he was about to do. Then he sent her to die. The ship sails out into the dark Mediterranean. Agrippina reclines in the luxurious cabin, surrounded by servants. The sea is calm. The night is quiet. And then, at a predetermined signal, the mechanism activates. The roof collapses with a thunderous crash. Beams and planks rain down. Servants scream. Agrippina's attendant, a woman named Acerronia, is crushed instantly, her body flattened by the weight of the collapsing structure. Blood spreads across the deck. Chaos erupts. But Agrippina survives the impact. She's thrown to the side, injured but conscious. And then the bottom of the ship begins to open. Water rushes in. The vessel starts sinking. Agrippina is 50 years old. She has spent her life in palaces, not training for survival. But she understands immediately what is happening. This is no accident. This is murder, her son's murder, and she refuses to die. She dives into the black water and swims. In the darkness, in the cold Mediterranean, she strokes toward the distant shore. Other survivors flounder and drown around her. She keeps swimming. Her muscles burn. Her lungs scream. She swims. She reaches the beach, dragging herself onto the sand, coughing seawater, bleeding, alive, survivor, again. She sends a message to Nero immediately.
I survived your accident, my son. Don't worry, I'm safe.
When Nero reads those words, the blood drains from his face. His advisors watch him freeze. She knows. She survived poison. She survived a collapsing, sinking ship. And now she knows he wants her dead. Worse, she's still alive to do something about it. His advisor Seneca speaks quietly.
She will come for you now. There's no more pretending. It's her or you.
Nero's hands shake.
What do I do now?
What you should have done from the beginning. No more clever plans. No more machines. Just men with swords.
That night, Nero sends Anicetus, a naval commander, with a squad of soldiers. No more subtlety, no more hoping for accidents, just direct, brutal execution. They arrive at Agrippina's villa in the dark. The house is quiet. Most servants have fled, sensing what's coming. Agrippina is alone in her bedroom. She hears the footsteps in the hall. Heavy boots. Multiple men. She knows. The door crashes open. Anicetus enters first, holding a club. Behind him, soldiers with drawn swords. Agrippina doesn't scream. She doesn't beg. She sits up in her bed and looks at them. Anicetus raises the club and strikes. The blow catches her head, stunning her. She falls back, blood running down her face. A soldier steps forward, sword raised. This is it. The final moment. The end of the woman who made an emperor. And Agrippina, even now, even dying, seizes control of her own narrative. She tears open her nightgown, exposing her stomach, and screams at the soldier.
Ventrem Feri, strike the womb that bore him.
Her last words are not a plea for mercy. They are a command. They are an accusation. They are a curse. Even in death, she directs the scene. Even bleeding and broken, she chooses how she will be remembered. The blade plunges into her stomach. Once, twice, again. She doesn't scream. She doesn't cry out for her son. She just stares at the soldier until the light leaves her eyes. The woman who murdered her husband, manipulated the Senate, and controlled an emperor is gone. The soldiers leave her body in the blood-soaked bed and report back to Nero. That night, according to Suetonius, Nero goes to see the corpse. He stands over his mother's body and examines it. He makes comments about her physique, clinical observations about the woman who gave birth to him. Then he calls for wine. He drinks. He eats. And when he finally goes to bed, he sleeps soundly. But sleep doesn't last. The first night passes in peace. The second night, the dreams begin. Agrippina appears, not as she was in life, but transformed, surrounded by the Furies, the ancient goddesses of vengeance. They carry torches that burn with black fire. They chase him through endless corridors. When they catch him, they wrap their hands around his throat and squeeze until he wakes up choking. Every night, the same dream. Every night, his mother's ghost. He summons priests, magicians, exorcists. He orders rituals, sacrifices, purifications. Nothing works. The nightmares continue. Agrippina haunts him until his mind begins to fracture. But Rome doesn't care about Nero's nightmares. Rome cares about power and the story power tells. Nero addresses the Senate with a prepared speech. His mother was a traitor. She plotted against him. She tried to seduce him, corrupt him, control him. He was forced to act in self-defense. Every word is a lie. Every senator knows it, and every single one of them applauds. They vote to build temples in Nero's honor, thanking the gods for saving their emperor from his treacherous mother. The same men who once bowed to Agrippina now praise her killer. This is how empires operate. This is how power sanitizes murder into policy. And Nero learned something important from his mother's death. If you can kill the woman who made you, you can kill anyone. Guilt becomes easier to ignore. Conscience becomes negotiable. His half-brother Britannicus dies next, poisoned at a dinner party. Nero watches him convulse and turn rigid at the table, foam pouring from his mouth, while guests pretend not to notice. His wife Octavia is executed shortly after. Nero has her head severed and sent as a gift to his new lover, Poppaea. When Poppaea becomes pregnant and complains about Nero coming home late, he kicks her in the stomach so hard she dies from internal bleeding. One murder made the next easier. One broken boundary made every other boundary meaningless. Agrippina had taught him that killing was just another tool of power. Nero took that lesson and applied it to everyone. But the nightmares never stopped. The guilt he claimed not to feel manifested in increasingly erratic behavior. He began performing on stage, singing and acting while Rome burned during the Great Fire. Some historians claim he set the fire himself just to clear space for a new palace. Others say he simply didn't care enough to stop it. Either way, he played music while his city became ash. His mind deteriorated. He declared himself a god. He married a boy who resembled his dead wife and made senators treat the child as empress. He executed anyone who looked at him wrong, spoke to him wrong, or failed to applaud his performances with sufficient enthusiasm. The young man who killed his mother to escape her control became more tyrannical than she ever was. And through it all, Agrippina's ghost followed him. In his waking hours, he saw her face in crowds. In his sleep, she strangled him with her own hands. He tried to burn her out of his mind with wine, with excess, with violence. But you cannot burn a ghost. You cannot kill someone who is already dead. This is what happens when ambition devours love. This is what happens when a mother sees her son as a tool and a son sees his mother as a chain. Agrippina made a monster. That monster killed her. Then that monster killed everyone else within reach. The poison failed because she had prepared for poison her entire life. The ship failed because she refused to drown. But the family, the relationship between mother and son, was poisoned from the very beginning. No amount of preparation could save that. No amount of engineering could fix what was broken before Nero ever took his first breath. Agrippina wanted to rule Rome through her son. She got her wish. Nero ruled with the ruthlessness she taught him, the cruelty she modeled, the complete absence of moral limits she demonstrated when she poisoned her own husband. She created the perfect emperor for her purposes. She just didn't realize he would use those skills on her first. If you stayed with this story to the end, you have seen something most history classes skip over. The textbooks talk about Nero fiddling while Rome burned. They mention his persecution of Christians. They call him mad, unstable, tyrannical. What they don't tell you is how he got that way. What they don't explain is that madness has a mother, and sometimes that mother's ambition is more dangerous than any disease. If you think modern families are complicated, ancient Rome says, "Hold my wine and watch this." Could Nero have become anything else? Or was he doomed the moment Agrippina placed a crown on his head and whispered that he owed her everything? Drop a comment with your answer. And if this kind of hidden history is what you are looking for, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story they don't teach you in school. Share this with someone who thinks they have mother issues, because perspective matters. In the end, Nero got exactly what he wanted. He was finally free. Free from Agrippina's control, free from her whispers, free from her shadow, free to go insane, free to kill everyone who ever mattered to him, free to burn Rome and himself in the process. That freedom destroyed him more thoroughly than his mother's control ever could. Agrippina's last gift to her son was teaching him that murder solves problems. Nero's last gift to himself was proving her right. And Rome, watching from the Senate floor and the palace halls, learned that monsters don't need to be born. They just need the right teacher.